Hey guys, welcome to the Tetra Health and Performance Podcast. Today we're discussing pet peeves and things that kind of give us the shits with the health and fitness industry. And there's a few of them, but we'll try and bubble it down just a couple of points here and kind of give you guys information to how to navigate this kind of weird landscape that is health and fitness. James, you want to start us off with a good point?
Yeah, definitely. So first off is the fitness industry is a $50 billion industry. So you have to watch out for market employers and how people are trying to grab the money. Not everyone has the best intentions for you. They're trying to make the quick buck. And some people are just really good at marketing, but don't have anything solid behind their actual approach to fitness. So our first point here is the one size fits all style of training.
Right. This is something that's polarizing that says they have a solution that can solve everything under the sun. And this can be as simple as like you might see this, I see this on the gram all the time, is hey, here's this one knee exercise that you've never seen before. And the exercise is generally a little bit obscure, something a little bit different, and has all these bold claims that it can absolutely fix your knee pain if you just buy into their program that dives into this exercise and its variations.
We're going to touch base on this a lot, but it's all about the individual. So when we are prescribing anything to anyone, whether it comes exercises, people's rep ranges, and what we're going to change up mostly is going to be what the individual specifically needs. And when people do put something out there, it seems like clickbait. It's like we've all done it before, and we want to see it. If you experience low back pain and someone says the 4 exercises that will get rid of your back pain, then you're going to click on it.
Yeah, 100%. And it doesn't just apply to training stuff and methods as well. Like this can apply to diet, any nutrition tips and hacks. They might tell you, oh, this is the diet you need to be doing. This is X, Y, Z that will fix anything you've got. Always inevitably wait for you to put in your credit card details before you get it. But
Well, we see that a lot, don't we? See like the fads of the fitness industry, the trends, people having polarizing beliefs, people being very emotional about their beliefs. And for example, like the same thing, we know that on Facebook, Instagram, and all these social medias, people will buy again if something is said that is very much against what they believe in.
Yeah, most definitely. So let's go back into yourself there, what you pointed on, Mick. Buyer beware. Obviously, any grand claims, require extraordinary evidence, some of that nature, right? And the unfortunate thing now is you can fake evidence and you can fake reviews. So it's even a tougher landscape now because once upon a time you might have to read someone's reviews and actually go, oh, okay, what they're saying is actually backed and they've proven these results with a bunch of people. But you can just pay a bunch of fake accounts now and go, hey, these guys have 10,000 bloody reviews. This program's solid. I'm good to go. But yet it's still crap.
Yeah, and we talk about that with specific people who launch certain types of training programs, and how with these training programs, all of a sudden they can be selling like 50 to 100,000 to a million. There's a few people out there who are now selling books with this kind of information on. And one of the issues is it is a one size fits all style of training program, and with these one size fits all styles, you are going to help some people, and it's going to be the people that specifically need what you offer them, which is going to be not that many people most of the time. When we have someone in, for example, when they do experience some sort of pain or they have some sort of weakness, we look at them as an individual and we assess them for their movement needs and their strength needs, and then we give them what they want based on what they're showing us.
That's that shotgun approach. Like you're just putting it up there and you're just hoping to hit something and you're likely to hit something. And you hear about those success stories and awesome about that, but you don't hear about the high percentage of the failed attempts or even how they exacerbated and they made issues even worse.
yeah,
Yeah.
because I was going to say something quickly about that as well. Is a really tricky thing is what you're saying is about how it might help some people, especially, and we've touched on this briefly before, and I think it was podcast number 3, about how even if you have these generic approaches or a shotgun approach, as you might want to call it, there are a lot of individuals out there who may be very new to training, very new to dieting, all those kind of things, and that just the fact of taking one step even if it's a very broad something and not quite what that individual may need, it's really tricky to then challenge them on it or challenge their bias and beliefs around something. If, for example, I've never trained a day in my life, and then I buy, James's fantastic new program that he sells to everyone who'll buy it, kind of thing. And obviously, if it's got a little bit of good stuff in there, so I've never lifted a weight before, I will get some benefit from it if it's got the bare bones of every program. What most likely will. The tricky thing after that is, how do you then convince that person? How do you explain to them, like, oh, look, yes, I understand you got results from this, or you got results from that diet, but there's a reason why there's a limit to that, or there's a limit to how good that's going to be for you, or the risk for reward, or all those things that you can consider.
And then you may also then see too much in these certain exercises that you're performing. You may all of a sudden think that these exercises are the be all and end all. And it may get you a little bit trapped along the lines when you feel like anytime, we've discussed this before as well, anytime you experience pain, that's your go-to. When really you want to look at the reason. And I think it just comes down to education, right? It comes down to the coach's experience and the coach's education. And sadly, with a one-size-fits-all program, you don't get that. You don't get a coach actually assessing you and your individual needs. And what ends up happening is they're going to just go, oh, this exercise fixes everything. I've done it with 5 other people and it's helped them. It's not going to help everyone. And really what we want to see is we want to see that we're looking at the reason for why someone has the problem. And that's where the education comes in. If we're looking at a knee, for example, we're looking at why that knee might not be tracking properly, what might be happening in the thigh, what might be happening in the foot, what might be happening in the hip. And it's a kind of chicken and egg kind of game where you've got to figure out where it kind of came from first. And we like to always focus on the linchpin, giving the person that one thing that's going to sort out most of their problems at first, and then work down the line towards.
Definitely. Like more on that sort of stuff you just said, especially when like you get coaches that might be newer on their journey and still discovering a bit of education to help them out with a lot of issues that they do see. It feels like it's a tool in your kit when you see something polarizing. You go, oh, that's unique, that's different. And you start to implement that with your clients, and because it looks impressive or it looks different, and you think that your clients love that because it's something different. But I don't think the client sees any extra value out of a cool looking drill, because it has to all be the right tending purpose. If you pick a better movement that offers your client progressive overload or gets them out of discomfort or it starts to build them the progress they need, that has more value than giving them something that looks kind of pretty. And I think there's a big effort in a big thing in the fitness industry where there's a lot of FOMO. Like you see this cool thing over there that's being done and you don't fully understand it. So you just use it and you implement it without understanding what it's about or what its in purpose or intent is. So like there's a lot of FOMO. And with that, it kind of just kicks off like wildfire. So I think there's a lot of those type of coaches out there, and it spreads like wildfire because it's shareable and it looks cool.
And it also comes down to certifications, right? When someone releases a certification, then they have a model. They have their model. And there's a good saying where models are I'm gonna destroy this by George Box. And the saying is models are useless, but they can be models are always wrong, but they can be useful. Sorry, nearly butchered that. But that's the saying. The idea is that models have worked to try and figure out different reasons why we might do something. But again, it won't always come because it's a model. It can't be changed so much, so it won't always come down to the individual. And we look at certifications in the industry, and with lots of certifications, Mitch mentioned this last week, but if we're a hammer, we see everything as a nail. And if we do a certain certification, and there's loads out there, and we've done tons ourselves, right? And when you do a certification, my thought is, and our thought of it, is that actually what you should do is you should take things that you see very valuable that kind of relay with your principles, and then take them, disregard the things that you kind of feel won't work, and then keep layering your information like that. And quite often with the certification industry, again, a massive industry, and there's a lot of sales on it, that people buy into a certain certification too hard, and they then become a certain type of hammer, and everything in front of them becomes the nail.
Yeah, 100%. It becomes so emotionally attached to that one belief system. And then eventually, after you've spent so long in it and your bias is so long towards it, that there's almost no going back, or it takes a lot of self-reflection and to be very intrinsic to go, okay, actually, you know what? I've made some mistakes here. And it's okay to do that if you can admit your faults and go, all right, maybe I didn't see the full picture here, and this is where this method and ideology falls short. And then to pull out of it, that's a hard thing to do. The easier thing to do is double down with your principles, block your ears, put your head down in the sand, and pretend like there's nothing wrong with it.
And
Yeah,
if,
100%. Sorry, I want to important to highlight, like it's a really important word, especially about education and things, is bias. Everyone's got a bias towards certain beliefs, certain movements. Like no, there's no end to your kind of the limit of where bias can kind of put you in. I think that's one of the trickiest things is when you're trying to look for new information or find new information and improve yourself, which is a great goal, and it's to be very well respected. But the trickiest thing is when something comes at you and shows you something that doesn't quite align with what you believe to be true or what you've recently been taught. And exactly like you said, that it's most important then to look into it, like assess its validity as best you can, or look into assessing its validity somehow. So if something's making a claim about, do this exercise, and you go, I've never heard of that before. Why would I do that? Look into it. See if there's any evidence behind it. Like ideally, that'd be great if there were some studies, maybe some anecdotal, depending on where those anecdotes are coming from. If they're all coming from the same source,
Yeah,
not the best. But yeah, and then just try to have an honest and think about it as like, oh, do I really disagree with the evidence being presented in front of me, or am I just backpedaling to what I know and what I believe to be true rather than what is being presented in front of me? And that's an important thing to kind of just keep in mind when you're trying to learn about anything, really.
I think that's a good skill set. I'll give you a big pat on the back here, James, because this is something I've seen you do multiple times with our our working relationship. Is whenever we see something new or something kind of cool, or not even new, something that works, and we just discover it, like the PRI stuff, for example. First thing I've seen you do once you've gone, oh, this could be cool, is you look for the counter argument straight away. Like, where are the faults in this? And I've seen you go through that thought process, and it takes you a bit of time to get the mind ticking. But once you find that new approach or new ideology or new information or whatever it happens to be, where are the faults? You look for that counter argument pretty early on. That can save a lot of time and effort.
Thanks, mate.
You're right,
I
mate.
appreciate that.
Credit where credit's due.
One big thing as well is I'm just going to go out there and just say there is no one exercise, and there may be an exercise that is particular to you at that time, but there will then have to be another exercise eventually off the back of it. There'll be never one full exercise that ever grows one muscle completely or ever completely treats a kind of a movement issue. We've got to add to them. We've got to pretty much fill the whole box of what you're missing. And nobody's ever just missing one part of movement. They're normally missing many parts of movement or many parts of strength. It's like when we're doing strength exercises, for example, there may be a really useful exercise to target a specific part of the muscle, but no exercise, unless one day they come out with the perfect machine that hits muscles in their full length from short, middle, and long. Until that happens, one exercise is never going to do the whole trick. We've got to do multiple exercises to hit muscles in multiple places. We've got to do multiple movements to gain multiple movement.
And I can think of straight away just a couple of examples through even just the last 10 years of fitness. At the moment, I think the big sexy muscle is into anterior tib, like kind of knees over toes-esque. Like, it can save your life if you train this muscle. It can cure cancer. It can do everything. And then before, I remember maybe the next recent maybe it was like glutes. Glutes fix everything. Everyone's got lazy glutes. Your hips suck. Your back sucks. Everything sucks because your glutes are weak. What's one prior that? What else have we got? What am I missing?
Oh, well, we're about to jump into this now. It's like the perfect time to jump into that.
Well, segue, point two, baby.
So the overuse and misuse of certain terms, and like Mitch just mentioned a couple there, it's like people actually saying lazy glutes, which sets people up on a bad path straight away. If you walk in, oh, my glutes are lazy, well, you pretty couldn't stand up there like that. If your glutes were completely lazy, you'd be sagging down onto the ground the whole time. Flat feet is another one. People being told that they have flat feet as if it is a problem as well.
I think a big thing to note here, and this again comes back to that marketing point that we started off the conversation with. I think if you don't know anything about health and fitness, and that's majority population, like you don't know these things, and that's fine. Everyone specializes in different things. But I think when you first get on your phone, you type into Google, you type in these keywords, you go, oh, yeah, you get told by podiatrists you got flat feet, and you go, oh, flat feet programs, flat feet problems, and all you're going to do is get those buzzwords coming up and those buzz programs coming up first thing in your feed. And they're the most likely thing that you're going to end up clicking on.
And quite often in marketing, one of the actual marketing rules is create a problem. So what they're actually doing for you is they are creating a problem that you did not know existed.
Yeah, and then they add an emotion next to it. They'll see like a sad person, like with my flat feet, like my life, and it'll be like a black and white photo, and like that little gradient change where everything looks sad and depressed.
And it doesn't take long for you to start blaming everything on that one thing. Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
and these things can be connected 100%. They can be connected very often, and the whole body is connected. But the fact that you're blaming something on something that probably doesn't exist is never going to be a good solution.
A few of these other big ones like poor posture. And this has become super mainstream, this one. We still get people that come into the gym, oh, I'm here because I got bad posture. I'm here because I was told, oh, my posture causes all my problems. I think that's probably maybe the hottest buzzword at the minute.
Yeah, well, definitely posture for pain. There's no actual evidence that posture can relate to pain as such, but there is definitely reasons why we might want to focus on our posture. But I think what people do most wrong is, again, it's a buzzword. It's posture said straight away, and people don't truly understand the meaning of posture and the whole multifactorial issues with posture. When it comes down to posture, there's definitely going to be positions that you take up all day long. Yep, when you're sitting, and you sometimes will take up a position up for too long because there is truly no good posture. The ability to move and have dynamic posture is really what matters. Can I take up different positions? Can I move my spine? Can I move my rib cage? Can I actually take up different shapes? And there not be too many shapes that aren't available to myself. And at the end of the day, if you don't have all the shapes, it's not the end of the world either. But we definitely want to be able to move comfortably. And I always think of it like you don't want to become like a square peg when someone throws a round hole at you and you can't get that square peg through. You want to be able to adapt to situations as well as possible.
To reiterate James' point a little bit, like that posture point is, if the biggest thing is if you're just stuck in a position you can't get out of it, and can your body make enough shapes to do the tasks that are at hand and needed? That's pretty much all that's needed there, right? And this ties in like buying online programs and things that kind of had those grand delusions of improving your posture. To know what positions you do and don't have, that takes someone that knows what they're doing to guide you through that. And that's like something what we'll do, like a screening where we'll test someone's like movement and go like, hey, straight leg raise, bent knee raise, all these basic little things. This is what you do and don't have. You're kicking ass, keep doing, you don't need to do anything, go along your journey, or you're missing these drills, you're missing these movements here. Let me show you a few drills that you can do to start regaining and reestablishing those movement patterns back. And that's how you attack it, because it's so personal and it's just personal. It's just a personal effort.
I'm going to stay on the posture train for a little bit longer, because I also think that quite often it's kind of demonized when people sit in a certain position and slouch. And truly, the evidence really points at is there's no bad position to sit in, but we should be fidgeting. Like fidgeting as often as possible, changing shape while you're sitting down. But even better than changing shape is standing up and moving around, right? Because we actually have a heart that pumps blood around our whole body. And the heart isn't actually super efficient at bringing blood back up from the legs and thighs. So it actually relies on muscular contractions for that. So, and we aren't really made to actually sit on chairs and have that dominant muscle tissue for very long. We'd normally be sitting in kind of like more squatty positions or cross legs or changing shape more often. So the idea is that as long as you can get up maybe every hour, just for 1 to 2 minutes, can be so incredibly helpful for you and can improve maybe what you see as posture as well at the same time.
There's still another buzzword. It's like picking me out of a hat at the
Yeah.
moment. Like bulletproofing, I see that's a very popular one with like online coaches and their programming. Buy my knee bulletproof, my back bulletproof, and hopefully a lot of the thick points we've already talked about. You can kind of start thinking already. I can see some faults in here. Again, it's personal. Not all, like, you don't have to glorify a couple of muscles. All right, it's going to be a full system approach. And again, it's independent to the person's needs and where they're at and what they have done previously and where they need to go for whatever they need to achieve.
Mitch, full system approach. I love that. Full system approach, because if we are looking at bulletproofing, back to our previous point, we instantly look at one muscle. It's like, okay, if we strength train this muscle because you haven't strength trained it before, little do you know that you probably have trained that before in many other big compound exercises. It's probably getting worked quite well. So there is always the case where some muscles get overworked and some muscles do lag behind. But most of the time, if you're doing big compound lifts, you're going to cover them. And there is time. There is good time to isolate things sometimes. But I definitely wouldn't be blaming your too many issues on just one muscle alone.
Yeah, and I think it's a slightly different perspective on this as well. Is something that needs to be considered is if you ever hear some of these buzzwords or read them or X, Y, Z, you find them somewhere. Really important that you kind of come to terms with what they're actually trying to say with the words they use. So, because these are buzzwords, you can say a lot of people can say the same word but mean completely different things by it. And unfortunately, a lot of the times now, especially because they are buzzwords, people in the industry will be trying to use them to attract that same market share from that word. Hence why there's a lot of functional training, things like that, a lot of, bulletproofing, all these things. You'll see the words because unfortunately, like, it does come down to, like we were saying before, fitness is a market, it's a business. And so if there's a chance that you can gain more customers, more clients, even if you're the best gym in the world, and you're doing everything correctly, at some point you do need to market to people to get them to see you. And that time at times does come down to using some of these words. And I think a good thing to look out for is as long as people explain what they mean by them. So whether that's any coach, as long as they say, okay, we're going to use this word. So if they choose that to be bulletproofing or choose it to be functional or got even lazy glutes or any of the words we've mentioned, if they explain what they mean by that and they, again, like I said, take your bias in, what does that mean? Do I think that sounds right? Do some research your own, and you can move forward from that position, I think, as well is important.
Lady, that's a hard ask on the consumer, isn't it?
Huge.
It's like you have to do not just level 1 of research, you have to do that level 2 or level 3 to find the right place for yourself where you can thrive. Because, mate, I know even us, our facility, we do, I hand on heart, I think we do the best job we bloody can, and I rate our facility top notch. But even we have like competitors around us who use same words or use these buzzwords.
The exact same words.
And they claim, and we know their training systems are quite flawed. Very flawed. And I don't want to sit on my high horse and go like, oh, yeah. But like, I'm for real. It's so hard for that consumer to go, okay, this place down the road, they say the exact same as you. They're $20 cheaper. Why? And then you have to sit there and have to do a 30-minute rant to them about, oh, well, actually, they don't do these different training systems. They don't regress. They don't do this. it's a bloody hard for the consumer. And mate, you
Yeah.
have to do that extra level research.
Yeah, and sometimes people, if they are buying something that they really like and they really care about, often like think trainers or something like that, then they'll do this research. They'll go further into it. They'll learn
Mm.
more and more and more. And then sometimes when it comes to probably what would believe to be the most important thing for most people, which would be their health, they don't do enough research into it. Or is it just that there is just so much information, contradictory information out there, so many of these buzzwords that actually I can imagine how overwhelming it can be.
Oh, 100%. And it's so tricky as well. And I think it's an issue that not sure if we've touched on it yet, but we definitely have in the previous podcasts around, even as businesses and things, trying to get the whole truth or the whole message out there while still maintaining context and giving the whole, like everything you want, getting people to get in and look at you, but also being truthful and saying, this is actually what we do here. This is why we do it this way. And we believe this is why it's why we've chosen it, kind of thing. And it's a tough one. And it's a very tough word to kind of like pick someone. And unfortunately, sometimes it comes down to trial and error. It's like, oh, this one looks like the best. I'll give it a go. Is it for me? Am I seeing results? Am I understanding what I'm doing? Am I getting a little bit of knowledge while I'm going through my training is important.
Well, good one there, Mick. Give it a go. Do a trial.
Mm.
Find out.
Yep.
And then use your own intuition to go, you know what? I had a good experience here, or I can see the faults in this place and I saw some red flags. I'm going to step away for this and try something else. Probably the best way, yeah.
Yeah.
I reckon another good segue. You got something else to say about this one?
No, I was going to just lightly, one last buzzword. I think, Mick, you're probably the best man to kind of touch on this. And it's kind of what we just were talking about, but like it's evidence-based or science-based. I think that's one you kind of see kind of what's the word? Just like kind of bolstered out everywhere.
Yeah.
I think you're a good man to kind of summarize this one.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. And I definitely had a bit of a rant about this one a couple of weeks ago. And it's very easy to probably find one study that shows something that you want to study. So it's very easy to find one that's not necessarily a good study, but the end result is what you want to tell people. And then as soon as you find that one study, you can say, oh, studies show. And that it's not honest. You can't be doing that. And it's really, it really does give me the shit. So that's why I bring it up. I'm glad you brought it up. But like, it's so the biggest things, if I'm going to try and do this as quick as I possibly can, if someone says studies show and then they either don't show the studies at all or they don't show the studies after people ask them to show them, red flag. If they show the studies but can't get access to the whole thing, or you can't quite get the biggest rocks out of it, it's a red flag. And then when you're looking at a study, if they send the whole thing and it's a daunting process because it's a very 9 times out of 10 it's a bland thing to look at and read through. I'd encourage you to just have a quick look at the subjects that are involved. So if there's only 5 people involved in this study, it's not that big a sample size to be able to give you a good indication. If those 5 people are all the same gender, all have the same conditions, or all doing there's no diversity in that group, also a bit of a red flag. I'm trying to think if there's any other big ones that can be explained quickly.
I might just put a little like a story behind this.
Doing Peanut?
Yeah, Peanut.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So just the other week, there was all over Instagram. It was advertising that, for example, 7 p.m. when the 9 News came on, that they were going to discuss how peanuts actually their words were actually very direct to the fact that peanuts do help. And they're like, eating a handful of peanuts before you eat a meal will help you lose weight. The funny thing about that was I quickly went, okay, this is interesting. I'm going to read that study because I bet this is not true, right? And I read through the study, and as I was reading through the study, I was like, okay, so they had 2 groups of people, both on low-fat diets, and the peanut group were having the extra supplemental fat from the peanuts. And then I kept reading through, and I was like, well, actually, and then they start saying how no one had any results at this time frame, no one had any results at this time frame. So I kept going through, and I was like, by the end of it, I skipped the results because I'd seen so often that they hadn't actually improved. And I read the results. It said, and in the results it said no change between the 2 groups in fat loss. So I was just like, how did they go about using that when there's actually no proof whatsoever that it helped? Maybe apart from a couple of other like factors that of like maybe diabetes. I can't remember exactly what the other factors were, but it definitely wasn't what they were suggesting. And then on top of that, it was funded by the National Institute of Peanuts.
Yeah, so that was actually
That's great.
While you had that spill, I got to remember a few other things we need to touch on. So funding, huge one. So there should be at some point in the study that says risks of bias or bias assessment. And one of those things, if your study is funded by the very thing you're looking at studying, you're probably going to be biased towards showing them a bit of love because they've just chucked you a bunch of money to complete a study. And then the other thing is you kind of touched on as well about a few different factors. So the term a lot of the time they use is confounding factors. So especially in the world of diet and training, there's going to be other stuff that gets in the road of the study. Like it's obviously immoral and unethical to lock people in a room and say, you will eat this at this time, you'll all do the exact same thing. It's just not going to happen. People have got other stuff going on. They may have other health conditions. They may have health conditions that haven't been diagnosed, but they obviously are present there. And so it's, again, a huge tough ask on the average person to go, oh, I've never done anything like this before. I haven't been involved in this world, but if this is what I'm being told to do, and they're saying studies show, well, how can I argue with science study? And it's tough, and it can be very annoying at times to see these things, especially for some individuals who maybe have certain conditions that have been tested, or they're doing things that aren't being replicated in studies, and it can be annoying. But yeah, just again, just do your best. Have a read. Try to have a look at what the study's doing, who's in it. If you can find ones that are more review based, so a meta-analysis or a systematic review. In essence, they're the ones that look at all the studies at once. They're not just doing one study and they're doing the experiments. They're looking at all the studies that cover roughly the same thing and seeing what the biggest change is. So, and if those reviews use a randomized control trial, that's your kind of gold standard. So a meta-analysis of randomized control trials is what you kind of want to look at to help. That's going to be your best level of evidence, and then they'll compare all of those studies and say, okay, 10 of these studies showed no change, 20 showed a positive change, and then maybe 30 or 20 showed a negative change, or all those kind of things. And it'll put into perspective, okay, so of all these people who were tested, maybe, peanuts have no effect. That's what it should kind of indicate. Whereas if you look at one study with 5 people, there's probably going to be too many things that are going to affect that result.
And normally, if it looks too good to be true, it probably is. What I was really proud of is that it was actually one of our members that brought it to my attention initially, and she was like, "This can't be real, can it?" And so she'd already obviously seen through the bullshit early on. But it's funny enough to say that her parents were like, next day when she's around the parents' house, the parents were like, who maybe don't have the experience that she has in a gym that actually really cares about people being educated and understanding and seeing through the bullshit, where they were like, we should have some peanuts before we eat.
Or what about
so
the
she
other?
educated them, which is fantastic. So it's passing down the line, right?
We've got a friend in the business of peanuts, and she's like, "Look at this study! This is fantastic! This is the greatest news ever!" So yeah, different lenses, right? Different lenses.
Totally. Yeah, it's where the information can be useful, right? And just on top of that as well is I think that when we look at the health and fitness industry and how much it's worth, the funny thing is that we see like inside the health and fitness industry people using these buzzwords as well, but then we see people coming from outside the health and fitness industry coming into the health and fitness industry to support their products and then at the same time, like, it's very hard to win, right? When everyone is using the fact that people want to get healthy against them.
Oh yeah, it's tough because everyone wants it. Why would you?
Yep.
Why would you not? Kind of thing. Why would you not? If there's a chance that you can improve your quality of life, improve this, that, or anything by doing something, you're probably going to look into it. Like you said, it's the same as that clickbait. It's like, oh, if you get told this is the thing to do, you're gonna have to have a read.
I want to move on to the next point, but I got to rant about this. I got one more point to add about this, and I think that we're inherently lazy as well because we're not looking for that. Oh, here's a great program. It's tried and tested. It's good to go. I can't wait to do it. I want to buy the one that's 10 minutes less or $10 more. Like, this is the old 6-minute abs. Like, what's better than the 6-minute ab program, the 5-minute ab program, the 4-minute ab program? It's So you got to know yourself and kind of be real with the expectations of what the progress will be or the results will be. And if you said it earlier, James, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
There you go. Fantastic.
Yeah. Point 3.
Yep, putting general population into specialization categories. I think this does slightly touch on point 1, but in a different way. It's where we're kind of saying that kind of one size fits all style of training again. And quite often when we're looking at training, we actually want to make sure that we're looking at the human as a full body, all the body systems. Like look at again, we've said it a few times, but that biopsychosocial model. And at the same time, we're looking at what are human traits and how can we improve as many human traits as possible. I think that's definitely for the the everyday gym goer, the general population gym goer. There is obviously specializations like your powerlifting, Olympic lifting, and all these types. But like Michael mentioned earlier, people have biases. And when a coach has a bias of their training style, they normally will feed the individual into that bias without them even knowing. So, for example, you come to a trainer who's really big into his powerlifting, but your goal may be, okay, so I want to lose some body fat, I want to tone up, increase muscle mass, and so be it. And they instantly put you into a powerlifting program because that's what they do with everyone.
To kind of give a bit more context to this sort of stuff. So, if you're unfamiliar with these terms, they're just different ways you can train, and they're very hyper specialized. For example, Olympic lifting is something that's done in obviously the Olympics, and it's a specialized two lifts that people spend their whole life cultivating and crafting towards. Powerlifting is three lifts where people spend their whole time trying to win competitions. But these training systems, you sacrifice certain attributes to specialize in others. So there's always a bit of a trade off. And with that trade-off, you got to ask, is that right for you and your goals and your desires? If you would like to be a powerlifter, fantastic, that's great for you. But no, there are certain sacrifices you will need to make to be a bloody good powerlifter.
Yeah, and off that as well is like you can say that I want to be a powerlifter, I want to do powerlifting. And if you aren't a competitive powerlifter, then you probably want to substitute some of the powerlifting exercises sometimes for something that may give you a little bit more range of motion or train other muscles and not maybe stick you into this bias as much.
Yeah, 100%. I think like a good way to explain this as well is kind of to use some of those analogies you use around postural stuff and with our posture is that by all means, if you're unless you have these performance goals of I want to be the best at this, I want to be this best at that kind of thing, and that's what I want to focus on. You can learn a lot from a lot of different approaches, and there's no need to be all in on completely on one. Yeah, you can dabble, go for a month. And this is what I want to go through this phase of train here, and then progress to the next month. Okay, I got some good gains there. I'm starting to stagnate a little bit. Now we're trying to take a different approach. Still focus on that overall improvement in most of whatever your metrics may be. Even if it's overall health, learn from the best and have a go at different things. Find what you like. Find what works for you as well, and try not to. Unfortunately, and same back with this bias. If you don't like something, sometimes you don't like it because you're not good at it, which is it's very easy to just go, oh, I'm really bad at that. I don't want to do those ever again. But sometimes those things are what you need to be doing. It's good to feed yourself into the things that you don't like to do or you're not the best at, for instance, because maybe there's a reason for that because you're constantly avoiding it.
And talking about the hammer and nail earlier, well, success leaves clues. And if we're looking at people like powerlifters, well, one of the benefits of powerlifting is you can get ridiculously strong in certain movements. So we actually want to take things from powerlifters and utilize them in our own type of training. Same with Olympic lifting, like developing power, fantastic for developing power. Well, we can steal from them and we can take what's best in powerlifting. And really, with all them kind of like very specialized categories, we take them, use them, and then maybe get in and out of them over time.
Yeah, you kind of said a word in there that's amazing. It's a good coach is a good thief. They steal. You cherry pick what's good and you discard what doesn't really work. And you learn to set the right thing in the right place when you program so it interweaves and develops into whatever attribute you're trying to develop. And that takes knowledge, education, and experience, but it can be done. And even if you're not a coach, you can experiment yourself and kind of understand the basic principles and learn how to connect them together.
And again, back to the all the habits and all the traits that humans should have. I really feel that you can be leaving a lot on the table. And when we talk about people wanting to feel better, I generally think that feeling better is the ability to have most of them traits performing pretty well. Like
Yeah.
you've got you've got power, you've got some strength, you do have that kind of full range of motion. Well, if you look at powerlifting, without going too hard on powerlifting, I think it's awesome. And like anyone that enjoys it, like do what
Just
you
an easy
enjoy.
example. That's
Yeah.
all it is.
It's what we see with powerlifting is we see that people are actually creating these really large arches, and there's certain people that are going to be benefited from powerlifting as well. People with bigger chests and smaller arms, and what they would be really good at is they would be really good at moving a very heavy weight, but that heavy weight for a very small range of motion. They will not be able to move that same range of motion, that same weight for a full range of motion if you were to have maybe your back flatter on a bench, maybe dumbbells through that full range of motion. So when you specialize, you get very good at your niche thing, but not very good at other things. And then we can look at going back to the word functional. We can actually look at that functionality outside of the gym and things that you may be doing where you actually need that more range of motion. And then you being strong for a full range of motion, there's a lot to be said for that.
Mickey, you kind of touched on it a little bit, and James, you did a bit more of it there. You'll dive into what you're good at, and you might see that heavier set individual because weight moves weight, right? Might not necessarily love cardio, have some bad experience, and go, "Oh god, this is so goddamn hard." But then they get underneath the bar and they're like, "Hey, I can actually bench more than the average dude over there. I am cool at this. I'm good at this." And they start to go, "All right, I'm going to layer into this. I'm going to get a little deeper, take a deeper dive into powerlifting." And you get that hyper specialized, and part of that culture with powerlifting is kind of the demonized cardio and the joke about it. I don't do anything more than 5 reps. That's cardio. But like again, there's so what you said, James. There's so many things that you're leaving on the table when you don't train those other attributes. To hyper specialize and say like I'm a 5 rep and under specialist, that's like 95% of the human traits that we're kind of leaving on the table.
And also, I think it's super interesting how people get so emotionally attached to these methodologies, these specializations, and they, like we were discussing earlier, when you're looking at something, you want to try and understand what that person's trying to do, and people should do that more often. They should actually, rather than go, that person's doing exercise wrong, just go. Some exercises that really work can look quite weird, and you want to really think like maybe this person has something, they know something that you don't know.
We've talked about like hyper specializing in certain kind of attributes with training, and kind of another thing that kind of it's not a specialization, but it's more of a mentality approach that you kind of see with training, and that's kind of the grind or intensity. Or you might know a popular dude called David Goggins, who's all about let's crush this, let's smash this. You're an absolute bloody pussy if you don't bloody wake up at 5 a.m. and go for a 10K run. And you do see this methodology and approach seep into to general populations, and they'll come in and go, "I'm going to train 7 days a week, and I'm going to smash every session." And we've seen quite time after time again, this is generally a flawed approach to just operate at level 10 max intensity the whole time. Intensity fluctuates, and it's not a consistent approach. Your system, your whole body cannot sustain maximal output for a long period of time. We're designed to have bouts of intensity followed by rest. And it just sets you up for a bit of failure too. Going, I'm going to smash consecutively, and as soon as you miss one or two, you've lost your momentum and you've lost what you've thought, and it's a big mental skydive. And then you just throw it. What we've seen multiple times, you throw it all in the bin, and then you move on. Rather than that opposite approach, which is that slow layering approach, where you're a bit honest with yourself. What can I handle? What can I do with my life at the moment? And what is achievable for me? Getting 3 or 4 sessions and slowly layering my sessions and my intensity as my adherence keeps progressing.
We did discuss this earlier, right? We discussed how someone like Goggins or someone who, Mark Wahlberg, for example, you see these posts where they go, okay, I wake up at 4 a.m., I train, I do my meditation, I do this, I go to work for these amount of hours, and I make this much money in that day. Well, these people, that this is their job. Their job is to look good. So technically, they're being paid to be in that gym at that time in the morning, and also they may not have all the other jobs that most of us have throughout the day. They may not have the but they may not have to wash their own clothes. They may not have to cook their own food. There are all these things above that. Quite often, the individual has a lot to do in one day.
Oh, definitely. And it's just like a lot of the time, this mentality stuff is like it's important to just go, like, why? Why would I get myself up at that hour? Like, do I need to fit all that into one day? If the answer is yes, well then, good luck. It's going to be a big day. But it ask yourself those. A lot of people have just like, oh, I'm going to go to the gym at 5:30. I'm going to do 5:30 session. Okay, cool. Why? Why would you do that session? Oh, because I want to get up and start my day. Cool. You can still do that. Maybe do the 6:30, get that extra hour of sleep. It'd be really beneficial to just sleep a bit longer, recover a bit more. Maybe you perform better the 6:30 session. Maybe you don't crash at 3 o'clock in the afternoon because you got up extra early. Just ask yourself, is this right for me? Is this approach right? And there are plenty of people who do smash out a session early in the morning and then they get on with the day, and that's fine. But they may be going bed a bit earlier than you. They may be doing these other things to facilitate that and to get all their stuff into one day.
And with that why, I kind of think of how many people need to save an extra 4 hours in their day. Right at this moment, most people would do well with just an extra 20, 30 minutes. And think of the stress that you're going to be putting on yourself and how, like Mitch said, how unachievable that's going to be. Well, if you can actually just be like, okay, I'm going to try and make an extra 20 minutes in my day for now, you'll be able to handle that new amount of stress because it's not too extreme. And then before you know, okay, another 20 minutes. And then before you know it, you've maybe saved an hour or whatnot. But not many people need to actually make an extra 5 hours instantly in their day. But if you have big aspirations to for success in certain areas, then maybe that is the way to go. But I would just suggest that anyone that is doing it doesn't just change their lifestyle immediately. Like Mitch said, that will actually make them probably more upset that they don't achieve their goals. And like Michael just said, the why behind that, you probably only need an extra 20 minutes to save a ton of time in the day.
Something I just thought of as well is like, how often do you hear people say that, oh, I'm going to make that extra time today, not to train, take care of myself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Oh
I'm
yeah.
gonna make that time instead of, if I have to get up and get to work by X time in the day, instead of making myself get up even earlier to train in there or something, take some extra time later in the day to relax yourself and go, okay, now this is my recovery time from my training from yesterday or something like that.
You get a whole extra day of sleep. If you're one of those individuals that gets up and does like a 5 a.m. session where you have the ability to maybe train at 6 or 7, you have that extra hour of sleep. It might not be a lot for one day, just one extra hour. But if you apply that by a week, I got 5 hours back from a Monday to Friday. I times that by a month. Oh my God, I've got 20 hours worth of sleep. I got like 3 to 4 days worth of whole sleep now extra that my body has to recover and look after itself. And guess what? That's better for adaptation as well. You'll recover, you'll handle more stress, and you can probably go harder in that next session as well. So it's not just being so micro lensed in and just go, I'm going to crush today. You've got to think like, what can I do in a week? What can I do in a month? What can I do in, a larger lens period?
And awesome, celebrate your wins. Congratulations if you are someone who's making an extra 20 minutes, but don't make someone feel bad for not being able to do it. And also look at everyone as the individual. Again, like we say often, it's like you don't know what that person's doing throughout the day. You don't know how busy their days are, and you don't know their energy levels. So if you are doing it yourself, celebrate your wins, and then you can kind of just not push it on other people. I hear very often of people going to trainers and then just saying, just don't have enough time to train at the moment. And the trainers instantly just kind of belittles that person and says, well, I have enough time to train. Like everyone has enough time to train. There's no way you can't find enough time to train. Well, you have to meet that person in the middle. You have to say, wait, 1 second, why do we feel like we don't have enough time to train? And let's look at your day and maybe let's see where we can fit it in. And let's change up the training to you. We've done it in here where we do run hour-long sessions, but there's times where people have said, oh, I'm going to be late. And well, the best thing to do is just like, hey, if you are going to be a little bit late, so be it. You did 45 minutes. That's better. That's better than an hour. Obviously getting in for the whole hour is always going to be better because you're going to get the full session, but we have to meet people where they're at. And I
Yeah.
find that there's a lot of demonization on that people like say how well they're doing, but they also push on other people a standard that they may not be able to achieve.
Yeah, it's a bit of experience too. I've heard that said multiple times, and generally that coach or trainers like in their early 20s or late teens, it's very like they've got the first couple of qualifications, they go to uni and that's it. They've got no other obligations and they train.
Yeah,
That
Mum's still
is,
doing the laundry.
yeah, exactly.
Mum's still cooking dinner.
Yeah, good life is good. And that's very different than the client you're training that's paying you good money, that has their job, where they work 9 to 5 or probably longer hours than that. They have their relationships. They probably have their dependents, their kids or their pets or whatever it happens to be. That's a bigger lifestyle. There's more complexity there. And like you said, you've got to have some understanding. You've got to know what's on their schedule and what's achievable. You saying, oh, well, I train bloody 8 hours a week and, I eat a perfect diet. That is ridiculous. You think that makes them feel better, and I think that makes them have more achievable aspirations for their targets? Not at all. It does the exact opposite.
And we see that a lot in the industry. We see people getting really, really emotional, tied up to like certain things and their beliefs, and then pushing on other people their beliefs. It's such a common thing we see, and people being really scared to step outside of their own beliefs with that kind of stuff, and actually understand how different people are. But that's what it is. It's like this stuff is impressive when people do that. And at the end of the day, like showing it on social media, we've all seen it, haven't we? We've seen that the kind of the jokes about the influencer like for the camera eating a salad and then turn around, bite to the burger kind of thing. But you can't believe everything you see, right? You have to like let your actions speak louder. Yep.
Cool. Any extra points that we want to throw on this one, lads?
No.
I think so. I think that's covered off things pretty heavy detail.
All right, let's turn on the emotional music and let's say a farewell.
Oh.
So pretty much, first of all, we'll say just a big goodbye to Michael, which is doing his last week here at Benchmark, which is, what is the date today? The
7th.
last week, the 7th.
Yep.
So last session will be on the 9th. Mick's been a part of our team for like 2/3 years now.
Yep.
Been an awesome member, great bloke, just good dude, knowledgeable, smart as all hell, great work ethic. He's been a pleasure to have a part of the team. But moving on to big things, Mick, tell us what you're doing.
Yeah. So before I move on to where I'm going next, I just wanted to obviously thank you guys so much for the opportunity I've had
Thank you,
here. Came on just got assigned here, luckily as a fresh-faced intern, as a placement student, to finish off my uni qualifications. And then obviously that was cut short a little bit by COVID, and then I had to come back on and finish my hours afterwards. And then after that, I was lucky enough, the boys asked me to get a few extra qualifications and then come on board as a team member. And that was in late 2020, and that was outstanding ever since then. So obviously had another bump in the road with COVID again, 2021. But in between all that time, and all of 2022 this year been have lots of fun and learnt more than I could have imagined after a 10-week placement that I would have just been assigned here for, and learn a lot. And obviously not just a learning and working environment, but obviously it's a really good community here, not just with Mitch and James, but all the members here at Benchmark Canterbury have just been absolutely outstanding. Like, I mean, I really do believe that everything have got myself into now is I can attribute a lot of that to everything I've learned and progressed myself and built here at Benchmark Canterbury. So moving forward, later on this year, I'll be starting a role with the St. George Illawarra Dragons as their sports scientist for the NRL team. And so that's very exciting. After finishing up, I've done a few internships in different sporting things, all unpaid and all that kind of stuff, and worked, as those who are familiar with my Fridays and different things, I try to do some data work with you guys here at Benchmark and track things and measure things as best I can to try and hone my craft. And that's been actually really beneficial for me learning as long. You guys as my guinea pigs, which has been nice. But yeah, so I'll be moving on to some more kind of sports sciencey stuff in that elite sport realm later on this year. But again, I just really want to echo what I was saying before, like, thank you guys for the opportunities I've had here, and not just that, but also the environment that you guys have created and everything that you've built here has been outstanding to be a part of.
Thanks, Michael. Yeah. Fantastic. It's been an absolute pleasure having you, mate. From day one, your work ethic and just your information, just how you look at things with your lens has been fantastic here at Benchmark. Has really improved us as well in so many different areas. Thank you.
I look forward to like when you're quite a few months into your role and you're established and you've got a bit of normality to probably having you back on the podcast.
Oh yeah.
And pardon me, telling us a bit about the experiences and how you're using data, and I'm sure you're gonna have a lot to share with us and the listeners. So, mate, let's make a verbal contract that happens in the near future.
Yeah, 100%.
And really
100%.
look forward to it.
No, definitely. I really look forward to it as well. And exactly. So as soon as things are a bit closer to normal for me, then 100% we'll look at Teat up and come back and discuss all things that I can get off and that I can try not to get too in depth with for the listeners if they start zoning out about all my data and stuff.
Skip.
Okay, still talking about data. Okay, next.
Yeah, and definitely that. And also we have discussed getting you on, getting you to do your kind of like what you talk about best, the study side of things and the hierarchy of studies and what to look for. Maybe that in a little bit more depth.
Yeah,
that'd be amazing.
Of course.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much. To Michael, mate, best of luck, and thank you for listening to us today, guys. This was just a bit of a ranty day, which is a bit of fun for us actually. So like, subscribe. Really look forward to catching on the next podcast, guys. Hope you have a great day.
Yeah, Cheers. Thanks, guys.